we joined the theater in 1968. We were invited by some friends to see a benefit performance of The Odd Couple here at the Theater of Western Springs. This was in the spring. Well, that fall, my husband came home and said, we have joined the Theater of Western Springs, and I'm going to go to Mary Cattell's studio classes. So I thought that was his thing. I really did. Community theater is the last thing in the world I thought that I would get involved in, ever. But I know he had tried several different small community things, church basements and school gymnasiums, and they never really worked out. But I think here he found something with a backbone that he wanted to be a part of, and I thought, okay, fine. Well, less than a year later, I was watching a rehearsal that he was in, and Mary Cattell came up and sat alongside of me. She was a very soft-spoken woman. Yeah, she never talked very loud that I've ever heard her do. And she put her hand on my knee, and she said, now, isn't there something in the theater that you would like to do, or you would enjoy doing? Well, you know, she was a hard woman to say no to, and there was just something about her, you know. So I thought, well, I know acting isn't it. Certainly not going to do that. So I was referred to Marge Mason kept her name later. And Marge, being Marge, said to me when I was introduced to her, well, what can you do? You know? And I thought, well, I can sew, right? So I just volunteered for committees.
I officially became an active in 1972 when I went through studio with Mary Cattell. It was Mary's last studio class that she conducted. There was only 6 people in the class, but I knew about TWS before that because my parents, Julie and Dick Mills, were actives prior to that. And while I was in high school at Lyons Township, I got to know the ins and outs of the theater by sitting around the dinner table and listening to their stories and everything. And then I went away to college, and when I came back was when I said, let's give it a shot. So I went through studio, and the first production I was actually cast in was Witness for the Prosecution. That was right after studio graduation, and it was a non-speaking role.
Well, let's see, I joined the theater in '61. My wife saw an ad, article in the paper about studio, and she said maybe it would help you with your presentations that I did, little art shows. So I said, okay, I'll go see what it's all about. And I talked to Jane Burns, now Jane Stacy, and she's been a lifelong friend ever since.
Nice.
And she was the first person I talked to, and she and her husband, Fred, were kind of like my mentors in the theater. And I didn't know, I'd never been in theater before, so I was a raw recruit, but I learned fast. And my first play, Mary said to someone else, she didn't tell it to me, she said, Archie's like a stick. I can't get him to move from here to there. But finally she did.
And actually, I never got to work on a show with Mary because she died, I think, in 1972, and I was not chairing anything at that time, but did work with Lou Lipa and then Val Benton and on down the line. I had no idea that I would become so involved in the theater. But I did, and I have found that it was, well, it was friendly, for one thing. You always felt kind of welcome into the group, and so I've enjoyed it.
And, you know, I've done everything. I've been on stage, I've been on the board of directors, I was served as chairman of the board twice. I probably served on just about every committee that there is that you could serve on. And it was actually through the theater at TWS that I met my wife, Debbie. She and I were cast in a director's workshop, and I guess about a year after we were in that play together, we got married, and in September it'll be our 37th anniversary.
Congratulations.
So if you are hoping to find your love at Western Springs, you may find it in more than one way.
So I went to studio and I learned a few things there. Mary was a great teacher. Then after that, they were casting me in all kinds of plays, and my wife was very upset because I would take any part they gave me, all the parts they gave me. And she said, "You don't have to take them all." I said, "Well, yeah, I do." So anyway, I loved it. I love it still.
I think that, you know, we've progressed a lot. I can remember it was like 1991, 92 season that they moved the stage manager from behind the stage to the booth. Now that was a challenge for those of us that stage managed, and calling the cues. We used to just turn the show over to whoever was doing the lights, and they took care of all the cues and so forth. So when we were told by Ron Tobas that this was going to happen, I wondered, oh boy, you know, I've never been in the booth. So the first show was, I think, The Art of Dining. And I had already signed up to stage manage, I think, the third show of the season. But in those days, you didn't know what show or what the play was or anything. So I thought, I'll get in the light booth for the first show and see how this goes. And it was Mary Ann Brooks was the stage manager, and John Wayrock was chairman of lights, so he let me be on his committee. And two of the most probably calm, stable people in the whole theater. Couldn't have been a better group to get in with. The problem with the booth is I'm a pacer, and there's just no room there pacing. But I watched it and I thought, you know, I can do this. And so in October, I think it was, I got a letter from telling me what the play was that they were going to start for opening, I think, in January. And it was called Wings. Had no idea what Wings was. Assumed it had something to do with airplanes. It was a very interesting play to do. I think there was over 100 cues, but it was a good learning experience.
I think the generational aspects of TWS make it unique also in that you're working with people of, you know, all age groups. We have our own Jane Stacy, who is 100 years old, maybe 101 now, and is still active. And when my son Chris, who is now part of the TV show Chicago Fire, was in children's theater, and my parents are still active, and Debbie's parents were active, we were the first family to have 3 generations all involved at TWS at the same time when Chris was in children's theater.
In my first play, I got shot,
What?
and I fell on my knees. And Mary said to someone, "Tell him how to fall. He's going to ruin his knees." And I did. My knees are terrible.
Uh-oh. What was that show? Do you remember?
It was called On Borrowed Time. And Fred Burns was one of the big ones in there. I had a small part, and he shot me. He loaded the gun. He had me watch him load the gun every night. That there were blanks in there because they used a real gun. And it was close up, and every time he shot me, I could feel it right here.
Oh my gosh.
And I would fall on my knees, and they said, "Don't fall that way. You're gonna hurt yourself." So I learned how to fall.
Mary Cattell had, you hear nowadays people saying, well, when Mary was here, she had her rules. Any rules Mary had, I think, were not written rules or anything. It was that she wanted to keep harmony in the theater family so that everyone could enjoy it, the whole family. I'm sure that's why there was Sandwich Sunday. It certainly was a lost rehearsal for the actors on Sandwich Sunday to have to stop in the middle of the show and go out in the lobby and have sandwiches and then go back and try and get engrossed in it again.
In '72, as they say, the first show that I was in, I was actually still in the studio because they needed young people at that point. Mary said one day, "Would you be available to?" And it's like, "Yeah, okay." And I think from that point on, really, while I typically got cast every year, I think I worked on just about every crew in one capacity or another. Mary's teaching style, she taught what are called the 5 W's, which is who am I, where am I, what am I doing, when am I doing it, and why am I doing it? And her approach was to let the individual develop their character based on those five principles, and then she would help you, move along and grow in the role. Unfortunately, she died about a year later, so I was never in a show that she directed. She was considerate of people. She expected you to uphold the values of TWS, and as I say, she was the champion that we're all in this together. So, it's kind of using the phrase, we all got here on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now.
I did just about everything backstage. Did everything except sound. I did lights on a show. I was in paint chairman for about 7 years and did a lot of painting and building. Yeah, I did quite a few things. When I was younger, I was a sign painter. So I painted a lot of signs around the building and I put up the sign on the front there.
And many,
raised letter sign.
and many of the bricks that
Yeah.
are in the
Oh, yeah,
dressing
in
rooms,
the-
those are awesome.
Yeah, I did quite a few of those, and I enjoy. It's a good way to get to know people who are working backstage.
I have been directed by every artistic director that TWS has had since Mary, with the exception of Rick Snyder. I stage managed 2 shows for Rick, so had the opportunity to work with him in those capacities. But I've done. I think I was counting the other day. I think I've acted in the years that I've been here. I think it's been 27 plays, and I've lost count of the other ones that I've been involved with in one capacity or the other.
I would say anybody who comes in, it's a wonderful opportunity to expand your universe or your ego or whatever. I think it's good to be in a group like this and to see what you can do and learn all you can. That's what I would tell them. I was so raw at it. I just learned and looked and watched. I said, I saw somebody who I liked, and I said, he's a good actor, I'm going to watch him. And I sort of imitated some of those people. John Caven was one of my guys that I really loved to watch him act.
But I think the community theater people that I've seen, and the actors, probably especially the actors, they know how to do this. And I certainly a theater like the theater at Western Springs couldn't get in a better group.
Being an active laureate is being named an active laureate is kind of like being named the Pope. You have to get old and you have to wait a long time. But,
And the smoke has to rise.
and the white smoke went up, so I'm honored to be recognized. But as I say, it's something I love to do. It's been an honor to be affiliated with such a group and to be recognized as an active laureate for really something that you just love doing. It isn't that you're looking for accolades or anything, and I think that's what makes TWS unique, in that it's a family that this comes together, and we do what's needed to make it successful, and no one really cares who gets credit for it. It's a collaborative arrangement, and if at the end it's been a successful run of a show, everybody can take credit for having had a part in it.
It's a wonderful thing. It changed my life. I really did. When my wife and I travel a lot, and we learned about travel from people in the theater, from friends we've met, and we've met some wonderful, wonderful people. And I just love to be among them.